Our weekly walk today is entitled Art Deco in Central Park. Now, October is also known as Archtober, which is a series of events that really brings over 100 partners and institutions from across the 5 boroughs and even the country to celebrate the rich architectural history of New York City. Events range from building tours and lectures by design experts to architecture-themed education programs and professional development offerings. You can go to archtober.org and learn about amazing events happening all over the city, all reflecting on the rich cultural and architectural patrimony that we have in New York. We'll be together for approximately some 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and we'll be exploring some of the architecture and specifically Art Deco features that can be seen, reflected, manifested in Central Park. Our mission at our organization is to preserve and celebrate Central Park as a sanctuary from the pace and pressures of city life, enhancing the enjoyment and well-being of all. Architecture only enhances this mission. A little bit of housekeeping before we move on. As you know, we're using Zoom. All participants are muted. Only my video feed is on. I am glad that you are all commenting on where you are tuning in from. We have people in classrooms up in the Bronx, Upper East, Upper West Side, and even in Great Britain and other countries as well. So it's great to have you. If you have a specific question that you'd like an answer to, my colleague Carla is on the back end and she'll be more than happy to help you find answers. This is a map of Central Park. I always start out with a map showing you the area that we are going to be focusing on, which is located along this eastern stretch, roughly from 85th Street to 65th Street. Our route is going to begin right at the entrance to the ancient playground. We're going to meander along Fifth Avenue across the facade of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. So to then enter the park at 79th Street and keep along the eastern side, exploring some other very special details that reflect on a very strong architectural character in the park. Let's see, and this is our entrance. This is Fifth Avenue at 85th Street. I'm across the street, and directly across, you can see the park. You can see the perimeter wall. And this is our first point of interest, is an entrance to one of the 20+ playgrounds that we have in the park. It's called the Ancient Playground and was built in 1973. And it's unique in the sense that it's the first of several adventure-style playgrounds that were built in the park in the 1960s and 70s. These playgrounds are custom designed and feature no standard play equipment, a modern approach to playground design that intended to encourage exploration and inspire creative play. These stand as a memorial to the name that you see inscribed here to the left, William Church Osborne. They were actually first dedicated in 1953 on a playground that memorialized him. He was a former president of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and you can see this distinction inscribed over here on the right-hand side. After nearly 2 decades, the playground where this was first installed was demolished. This is where the Metropolitan Museum of Art built their Temple of Denver wing, which we'll see referenced just in a bit. And then in the 1970s is when they were installed in this section of the park. Now, they were designed by famed American sculptor Paul Manship. This name might ring a bell, and if it doesn't, it's very probable that you already know of his work. His most popular sculpture is over at Rockefeller Center, the sculpture of Prometheus, over by the ice skating rink. Paul Manship created many very special works of art, and in Central Park, we're very lucky that we have a very nice concentration of his creations. So let us take a closer look at what this is about and how Art Deco manifests in this particular gate. Upon closer inspection, we see a lot of animals and leaves as well. keeping in line with the theme of a public park, a place to explore nature. But actually, what we see depicted here in relief form by the hand of by the creativity of Paul Manship are references to a literary work called Aesop's Fables. Aesop was a 6th century Greek philosopher who communicated stories that taught morals. And some of these stories you might be familiar with. For example, this close-up over here shows you a fox and a fox and a crow engaging in conversation, and we can see that the crow is up on the branch over here with what appears to be, and what is actually referenced as, a piece of cheese ready to eat it. But a fox is wanting it, is desiring this piece of cheese, and the fox actually goes about flattering the crow and telling it how beautiful it is and how beautiful its sound might be. Now, we know that he might be bluffing because crows don't have the sweetest of sounds, but actually in this conversation, when the crow opens his mouth, the cheese drops and the fox eats it. And the message here is to beware of false flattery, because it might not lead to what it's actually coded to be. Just directly below, we have another reference. This one you might be a little bit more familiar with. This is, and you can actually see the inscription over here at the top. The hare and the tortoise. Slow and steady wins the race. The story, very short story, Aesop's Fables. The story of a hare who is confident in how fast he is. A tortoise that is, of course, very slow but very steady in his pace. The hare thinks that he's going to be able to beat the turtle with no problem, but actually falls asleep in his waiting, and the turtle actually wins the race. Message to not let our guard down. And on the other side, on the other panel, we see this adorable reference to city mouse and the country mouse. Again, beautiful stories that connect to very special dynamics that, although written over 2,000 years ago, apply to our lives today. You can see how masterfully executed the figures are, the richness of detail, and this is something that is literally at our feet. Not a lot of people notice these details as they are entering the playground itself. And you can also see how covered in dirt it is, and this is from the incredible amounts of rain that we've received in the last couple of weeks. We're getting the work done. In the future, we'll be sure getting to this very special aspect over here and make it shine again. As again, these figures are just masterfully executed. Now, the playground itself is unique in many regards. This is, as I mentioned, the first custom designed playground in Central Park. 1973 is when it was dedicated. And it features an ancient theme of decoration. For example, you can see an obelisk. You can see the Temple of Denver wing just south over here behind. This is the Metropolitan Museum of Art. This is where the previous playground used to be. We can also see details like this obelisk that is also a rocket ship as well. So merging the ancient with our future into the stars. Now, exiting the playground, as we have a lot more to explore, we can see the back of the Osborne Gates, and on top we can see there are these sculptures as well, a group of 3 deer and a group of 3 bears, and these 3 bears are going to be coming along as we continue on our stroll. Now, leaving the ancient playground area, we go across the street and stroll along the Fifth Avenue facade of the impressive Metropolitan Museum of Art, and past this alley of linden trees that have been carefully manicured, giving you a very Versailles kind of feel. It's very interesting. As we pass this grove, we encounter the main steps, the main entrance to the museum, which is very classical, neoclassical architecture from the early 20th century, but in recent times, accentuated with these exhibitions that are now exhibited on the facade, on the niches of the Metropolitan. This is the most recent one, and it's called Scratching the Back by an artist named Bagramian, from Germany, but born in Iran. So, and I apologize if I'm pronouncing the name wrong. This is the plaque affixed to the wall, letting us know a little bit about what this exhibition is about. The artist created 4 abstract polychrome sculptures with components that seem to have washed up like flotsam and jetsam in the void of their respective niches. These forms at the threshold of the museum present a metaphor of the institution as a filter of historical fragments deemed representative or exemplary. Again, works that enhance what we already have and that bring forward the possibility of new and more open interpretations to these treasures that we've cherished for generations. You can learn more about it by going to metmuseum.org/Neri Bagramian or scanning this QR code. If you're watching on YouTube later in the future, pause it and scan it. It's a very enriching exhibit, I have to say. And I also like how it complements what's already there, the display for this Manet and Degas exhibit that they have going on. Beautiful pastel colors, and even the people waiting to enter the museum are complementing what is on display at this iconic facade in our incredible city. Now, moving along, we also have other niches with other works by the same artist, different colors. The colors are the thing that caught my attention the most. Very, very visually interesting. And past the Metropolitan and back into the park at roughly 79th Street, Miners Gate, actually, we encountered this group of 3 bears at the entrance of another playground. And these 3 bears were installed in 1990 in the park. Let me show you a closer look. Samuel Friedman, a man named Samuel Friedman, approached the Central Park Conservancy with an interest to donate this group of bears as a memorial to his recently deceased wife, Pat Hoffman Friedman, who was a furniture designer who introduced avant-garde and early 20th century European designs to American households. The sculpture, as I mentioned, was dedicated in 1990 at the entrance to what was then recently added playground. And it welcomes children to the playground who are often seen jumping and climbing on top of the sculpture. Now, at the base of the sculpture, over here by the steps, we see a plaque letting us know that this was designed by Paul Manship. The original bronze Paul created in 1932, and this particular cast is from 1989. Now, Manship created a gate for the Bronx Zoo beginning in 1926, and this gate that he created for the Bronx Zoo was the inspiration for this group of bears. If we look at this gate in the Bronx, this is actually how it looks. It's called the Rainey Memorial Gates, a historical entrance over at the Bronx Zoo, dedicated in 1934. However, Manship was working on them beginning in 1926. Stands as a memorial to noted big game hunter Paul James Rainey, and you can see 3 bears at the top over here and 3 deer. We saw this motif in different form over at the Osborne Gate, and now we see a larger representation here at the entrance to this other playground, just steps south from where we were originally. Now, Art Deco sculpture in particular is very characteristic. It's almost minimalist. For example, on this bear, you don't notice any sense of fur. Very smooth surfaces and a lot of angularity, and even a sense of geometry as well. And Manship and Art Deco in general is in many regards inspired by pre-classical art, the arts of Greece, medieval Europe, and Eastern Asia as well. So although a more modern style, it's inspired by ancient visual vocabularies. The playground behind it, by the way, is the Ruth and Arthur Schmatbeck Heckscher East Playground, but also known as the Three Bears Playground. And it's also accentuated with another gate. Now, this particular gate is not too much topic of our conversation, but it's It's interesting to note it was dedicated in 1958, a memorial to a man named Irving Levy, and was a gift of the Irving Estate and of the Irving and Estelle Levi Foundation. It was designed by a man named Walter Barrera, who happened to be the head of the New York City Parks Department's Monuments Office for more than 30 years. Barrera is also credited with creating a sundial that we have on display over at the Shakespeare Garden. So for those of you who are familiar with the park, if you know of that sundial, this is the same artist who created this. And this gate also features animals like what we saw over at the Osborne Gates. In this instance, we have monkeys, which are alternating left and right, and also owls, some birds, and these squirrels. And I love the tails and the turning spiral dynamics that is repeated throughout this particular gate. Now, looking behind the three bears, we are just about to continue on our way to explore other Art Deco gems in the park. Notice the polished surface of the bronzes as well. This polish and this sheen is also characteristic of the Art Deco visual vocabulary. Now, moving along, we're going to venture a little bit further into the park. So to continue along our route, along the way, we encounter some of these beautiful pink grape leaf anemones that are still in bloom. There's always something to see when it comes to the foliage and what's blooming in the park. This is another photo of that very same grouping there. And this is past Cedar Hill, which will bring us to Glade Arch. Under Glade Arch, we encounter this musician. I wish we had audio for these, so to just bring in some of the sounds that are playing in the park, which are very calming and the complete antithesis of what's happening in the rest of Manhattan. And as we enter the Glade, we encounter this relatively nice clearing with a substantial amount of trees, all of them of incredible variety. The one that caught my attention the most was this Norway maple here, which you can see has this distinctive furrowed bark. Even after the leaves on the trees fall, there'll be something of visual interest. You can pick up on the impressive architecture of this great collection of trees that we have all over. We also pass behind Alice in Wonderland, the very popular Alice in Wonderland sculpture in the park. Not the subject of our story today, but nonetheless, a very special detail in the park, very popular attraction. Walking along the eastern side of the reservoir will bring us up a little hill where at the top we'll encounter our next stop, which is this bench over here, dedicated in 1932, made of white granite. Has an inscription on the back of the bench reading, is in Latin. It reads, Alteri vivas oportet civis tibi vivere, a message that communicates that in order to live for oneself, you must live in service to others. A message about public service. And that's because this is directly associated as a memorial to W Hutchins. W Hutchins was the president of the park board, the group of people who helped put the resources together. So to build Central Park took about 15 years to be developed. And it was a very laborious process, and people like Waldo Hutchins helped put that together. 1932 is when this was dedicated. And he is also distinguished in this detail as a founder of Central Park. Now, the bottom of the bench, actually, the floor has all these arc lines that you can, as they are called, and there are inscriptions on them reading vernal equinox and dates like March and the autumnal equinox. The equinox is when we get the same amount of light and darkness in one day. Equal meaning equal. Equinox. Equiday, equal day, and equal night. And on those days, on the vernal and autumnal equinox in New York, we have, as the sun shines, it cast a shadow on the bottom of the bench, and at 10 a.m., 2 p.m., no, sorry, 10, 12, and 2, the sun aligns to these arc lines. And it's interesting to notice it and experience it, because you don't really see it today because of the many trees that are directly behind it. But connecting to this dynamic of time, there's another timepiece at the top of the bench, and it's just on top over here. And the metal piece is another design by Paul Manship. And it also has another Latin inscription reading Nediruatur fuga temporum, let it not be erased by the passage of time, and more lines, where as the sun shines it, if you're skilled at it, you're able to determine what time of day it is. This is another view of that beautiful design by Paul Manship, a figure that is suggesting a lot of movement. This time period, 1920s and 30s, when Art Deco was all the rave, it's also marked by this incredible cultural shift that we can see reflected in Central Park proper. For example, as we leave this space after this beautiful view, we're making our way towards one of the venues where people would have entertained themselves during this time period here in Central Park in the 1920s and 30s. Going across the drive, we are now south at 72nd Street. We're making our way towards the Ramy Playfield. And the Ramy Playfield greets us with this sculpture depicting Mother Goose, but behind her, we also see this sign reading the Summer Stage, a place for concerts and live music. Even back in the day, before this field was created in the 1930s, what we used to have here was a structure called the casino, which became synonymous with 1920s New York, in the sense that this was a very popular center for entertainment, a very popular speakeasy as well. 1920, the era of prohibition started. Alcohol consumption was illegal, but that doesn't mean that people stopped drinking. And it is reputed that at the casino in Central Park is where we had, it's one of those places where alcohol was served. This is the mayor of New York City at the time, a man named Jimmy Walker, or Bo James, as he was called. Very popular, also very corrupt. He was ousted from office in 1934 due to a corruption scandal. And here we can see him accompanied by a Broadway showgirl named Betty Compton. She was a very popular dancer, very popular showgirl. She actually ended up marrying Mr. Jimmy Walker 1936, I believe, but they ended up divorcing as well. Now, a very interesting time period in American history, 1920s, 1930s, and the people that helped shape this cultural character can even be seen reflected in the park proper. I'm bringing you now towards the mall in Central Park, just south of the Ramy Playfield is where this path is. We're walking west towards the mall. This is the mall, the only intentional straight line in the park. As we stroll down, we are under this beautiful canopy of American elm trees that very soon will be turning a beautiful golden yellow color. As we walk down, it'll bring us to the Women's Rights Pioneers Monument, which are some of the female figures that helped shape this world for women that you can see very interestingly reflected in early 20th century America. Here we see Sojourner Truth to the left, who helped end slavery in the state of New York, and the standing figure is Susan B. Anthony, and to the right is Elizabeth Cady Stanton. They all died, I know Sojourner died in the late 19th century, and Susan and Elizabeth died very, very early on in the 20th century. The work they did helped so that women would get the right to vote, beginning in 1920. And this dynamic, we can see how it expresses in our culture. Flappers, dancing, the way that the women dressed as well, and the new opportunities that were being made available to women left and right around that time. Very interesting time period, and maybe a topic for further discussion into the future. Now, leaving this display over here, this cultural connector, we are heading towards our last stop in the park, and along the way, we'll see some very interesting things, which I found interesting. Going down this path, this is taking us towards Willowdale Arch, and this is how the arch looks. But before we go across, I want to direct your attention here to the right-hand side. I was a little bit taken aback And this is not new for me, but maybe you haven't noticed it before. These are green balls on the ground, which appear to be balls, but are actually fruits. These are Osage oranges, and I picked one up. They can be very big, substantial, almost the size of tennis balls, but sometimes bigger. And you can see the Osage orange tree right in the vicinity with several of them hanging. Very impressive and always catch my attention wherever they are in the park, as the female variety drops these substantial fruits, and squirrels are often in close proximity devouring them. Very interesting sign of the season that we're in. And going past Willowdale Arch, we come to Balto. Balto will be the topic of another discussion into the future. And we're going to turn to the right, where we encounter the Dean Slope, a native wildflower meadow that has been prepped for everyone to enjoy within the last couple of years, almost a decade now. You can see how mature it is. You can take a trail that'll bring you deeper into it, have you appreciate beautiful varieties of wildflowers and shrubs. We don't even need to enter, as along the edge we have these beautiful asters, which are in bloom this time of the year. Now, from this beautiful naturalistic detail, we're going to go through another arch and enter into the zoo area. Yes, the second oldest zoo in the United States, complete with a children's zoo put together in the second half of the 20th century. And this is the entrance to that zoo. And what you're looking at are the Lehman gates to the zoo. The Lehman gates were donated in the 1860s and designed by Paul Manchik proper in the, again, Art Deco style. And what we see is several unified design motifs featuring a child that's dancing between two prancing goats. We also see one child here playing a flute, and there's another one on the other side, and a very nice concentration of birds as well. A celebration of the interaction between children and animals, a very fitting entrance to a zoo that was specifically created for small children. As I mentioned, the gates were a gift by a man last name Lehman, Governor Herbert Lehman, actually, and his wife, Edith Louise, donated it in 1961 as part of their funding for the design and construction of this children's zoo in Central Park. Beautiful bird motifs, which appear to be emitting a sound. And although made of bronze, if you visit yourself, you'll see them. You'll see that the place is activated by the tons of birds that are in the vicinity and in the zoo proper. Now, I couldn't see any of the animals in the zoo. You have to go in and pay, but inside you can see goats, sheep, zebu as well, which is a type of cow as well from Asia, and a perfect place for young visitors to jump and climb and get closer to the natural aspects of our existence, and a place that'll bring out the child in everyone. I want to thank you for your attention today on this tour. We covered a lot of ground in just some 25 minutes, 30 minutes. I invite you to recreate this walk or potentially join us on one of our guided visits. My colleague Carl is going to be dropping some links in the comment section where hopefully you'll be able to join us. From everyone in the Conservancy, I want to thank you for your attention. I'll be looking forward to our next virtual meetup, which will be sometime in December, I think December 6th. As always, the park needs us. Think of the ways that you can contribute and support our work by going to our social media channels and following the conversations there. I'll be leaving the room open for a few moments to help find answers to any questions that you might have and to say the last goodbyes in the comments. Any questions, let me know. I'll be more than happy to help you find answers. It was a pleasure to tune in to everyone. Have a great afternoon or morning, depending where you are and when you are watching this video. Bye-bye.